SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Here's Sammy the Shovel here to tell you to call before you dig.
A lot of homeowners are working hard to create a loving home. Whether it's expanding that crowded deck, maybe a swimming pool, good times start with these additions. And that's why we respectfully ask you to first call 811 and have your utilities properly marked before you dig. It saves you from injury and expense. It's the law, and it's just the right thing to do. So call 811 before you dig. Remember us for your next project. Just call 811.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
All right, where'd Rhino go? Who's at the producer booth? Oh, you got a little trim. I see that.
Couple trims.
A couple of trims, that's right. That is because what a banner day it was for the 14th Annual Radiothon, Palmer Home for Children Radiothon. Tell the folks how we did, Rhino. What was the final tally?
Yeah, we rounded out the day at 6 p.m. after 12 hours on the air at the 14th Annual Radiothon for Palmer Home for Children. And thanks to the generosity of you listening and the generosity of Mississippians and Palmer Home alumni from around the country, the final total raised was $392,565.
Woo-hoo! That's big time. Man, oh, man. Now, I believe when MidDays completed yesterday, that's the first time I think you and I discussed that we've had a 100 handle on the front of the number, right? Man, that was pretty cool. It's always exciting when they come in and update the tote board right next to our set there. And you were doing a great job of highlighting the counties where contributions had been received and calling out those where we didn't have any. Appreciate that. And, of course, a number of our audience sent us texts and telling us about helping out the cause, and we very much appreciate them. Mississippians are so generous, no doubt about it. And they outdid themselves yesterday, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yes.
Incredible.
Set another record.
It's incredible.
Now it just puts a big old target on that 4 handle to start the number next year.
I love it. I say we're going to do it. I feel good about it. In fact, we've got Drake Bassett, President and CEO of Palmer Home, joining us with his thoughts at 10:35 today. It's Caleb Sailors from the news department, as is our custom on Fridays. He'll come in the Element Wealth Studio, give us a wrap-up of all the news at 11:20 today. So, we're all buckled up, ready to go. I've got to give a shout-out to the Conservative Coalition of Mississippi. The Oxford chapter had me into their venue to speak last night. Appreciate that. Marie Thomas, she heads that organization up. The Oxford chapter was at the Chancery building there. You know, one thing you notice during the summer in the college towns, in particular Oxford, is that there's actually parking spaces downtown. That is not the case during the school year. That is for sure. So always good to be on campus. Did a little tour just to see kind of what was going on, and a little different, again, than the way it looks from a traffic perspective. But appreciate that. Enjoyed being with those good folks up there. Got back about midnight last night. And then, of course, we got to wrap up the week here in the Element Wealth Studio. It's been a busy week, it feels like. A lot of stuff going on. We got lots of news breaking within the state, across the country. I believe the legislature dispensed with their business yesterday, that concerning the youth court structure in the state of Mississippi. And the governor, as you know, rather surprisingly, suddenly called a special session and called all them legislators back to the Capitol. And, of course, Rhino, the House, they had to meet down at the old Capitol. My daughter was there in the gallery observing. That's pretty neat, seeing that setting, I guess, versus the one they have enjoyed in our new Capitol for quite some time. Little different. Look more like sitting in a chair configuration that's more appropriate for like a play or something. You don't have the big old desks and the big leather chair backs. Just kind of sit down in a semicircular fashion, more akin to a theater type setup. But they got
It does make me wonder if we would get more accomplished if it wasn't such a cushy gig.
Yeah, a little different situation. And by the way, folks, that because they're doing a little work on the dome atop the house. I think specifically the glass and just the dome in general that has glass inserted around it. It's pretty cool, honestly. But I noticed when I was there earlier this week for the meetings of the AI task force, just on the steps of the Capitol, on the south side, you look up, and the entire dome, of course, is shielded off for the construction workers underneath the material there that so they can work. And, of course, it rains, and they got to keep the rain out of the house. So all that is set up right now atop the house side of the Capitol. That would be the west side of the Capitol. I don't know what the schedule is. Surely they'll have that done by the session, I would think. Haven't heard anything as far as what the expectation is, but no big deal. They just met. So you had the Senate meeting where they normally do. You had the House meeting down the street in the old Capitol. I wonder how many other states, Rhino, have both an old and a new Capitol. It seems like that'd be unique. Our old Capitol sits rather majestically at the end of Capitol Street, where it intersects and terminates with State Street, sits above there. Kind of a neat view looking down Capitol Street at the
Looks
old
like several
Capitol.
states.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So they preserved the old capitals and built new ones, more functional, of course. And, of course, ours is a museum now. It's pretty cool, the museum.
Yeah, like, for example, Florida, they built a skyscraper capitol in 1977, but they saved and restored their 1845 capitol. And
wow.
In Mississippi, we've got the current capitol that was built in 1903, and the old capitol was built in 1839.
Wow, okay.
Hawaii, you got Lalani Place, which is, according to this, the only royal place on U.S. soil used by the Kingdom of Hawaii, and it's next to their modern capital.
Okay, cool. I didn't know that. Appreciate you doing a little research on that. So, one of the cool things, if you haven't been in our new Capitol, which, by the way, you can schedule tours. They do a great job. My Rotary Club just did one a few weeks ago, and it's fascinating. And as much time as I've spent in there, some stuff I learned, didn't know as well. Like, for example, Rhino, in the floors, in some of the squares, they're glass blocks instead of stone or marble. And they said that on the upper floors, those line up with the glass blocks on the floors beneath, and you can actually see all the way down to the basement if you get close to them and look through there. That was something I was sort of fascinated with, did not know. And then if you spend a little time, like on the first floor, going back over underneath where the Senate is on the east side, lots of portraits. There's portraits, of course, of all the governors throughout our history and speakers and lieutenant governors, and the composites of the classes that go back a pretty long way, but those old paintings, those portraits of governors going back a long time, I should think that's fascinating. I often walk through there and think, wonder what it was like back then, to serve in office at that level. So I like to kid when I'm over in Rankin County speaking, Rhino, especially in the city of Brandon, of course, in Rankin County, prominently located in that county to our east. I'll often start by saying, well, it's good to be back in the town that was named for me. And they look at me like crazy. And that's because former governor of the state of Mississippi, Gerard Brandon, and he is, of course, the namesake of the county seat over there in Rankin County. He was our governor from I think in the 1850s, if I'm not mistaken, in the 1840s time period. So twice served as the governor. And I only found that out because I was walking around the Capitol one day looking at all those portraits. And of course, you notice the names because you think about the counties, the cities, and so forth in our state. They're named after these historical political figures. And this one was up there and said, wow, he was lieutenant governor, of course, for a while, and then he was elected in 1827 and then again in 1829. Brandon, Mississippi is named for him. Looking at
I just want to hear you try to pronounce his middle name.
I can't. I looked at it. I cannot do it.
I don't even know where to start.
Chicotaquay? Something like that. Coming right back. Stay with us.
Are you in your element?
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk Mississippi.
And out and love strange, so real in the dark. Think of the tender things that we were working on. Slow change may pull us apart.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks so much for joining us once again. We enjoyed our time up at the Palmer Home for Children as we do every year, Rhino. It's the time that you and I get to sit behind the set at the same time as opposed to looking at each other as we do here every day in the Element Wealth studio. But perhaps my favorite part is interviewing the children. And that's just always fascinating to me. And I think it's fair to say, Rhino, as you know, when they first enter the Palmer home, they wouldn't do that. They would struggle because they have come from an environment where they just don't trust people, and it's understandable. That's just human nature. They have a reason to be like that. And you've heard Drake Bassett, the president CEO of Palmer Home, talk about that, how they have situations where they don't believe, and when they say you don't really have to take food and put it in your pockets and stow it away somewhere at dinner here, we're going to feed you tomorrow night. And they don't have any confidence in that. That's just terrible to think about coming from those circumstances. So that's why we do this, right, is to provide that stability. No child should have to worry about, am I going to get fed the next day? If I got to figure out a way to sneak some food out so I can eat, that's just, you can't be a child doing that. You can't be your best. You can't thrive. You can't do what I describe as the job of a child, which is to learn and develop and be educated. When you're worried about stability in your home and whether or not you're going to be able to eat the next day. And that's the type of environment that Palmer Home provides to these kids is one where they don't have to worry about all that stuff. But I also enjoyed, we had one of the foster parents with a child that they fostered and raised and now is serving in the United States Air Force and called in to us yesterday from his base in California. And that was cool. And enjoyed talking to him. And, I mean, think about that. You come into Palmer Home, you know you came in under some difficult circumstances, and now you're wearing the nation's uniform. And said, Rhino, that I think I may stay. I may make a career out of this, which is super cool. So, and of course, I always have to put my pitch on those that are pursuing their higher education and are about to stay in the state of Mississippi and make this their home and be a contributing, valuable member of our great state. And so they're always just wonderful and such a delight to deal with. I know you pointed out to me a couple of years ago, my favorite time is when lunch is served and they all come piling in the room there and they got a spring in their step and they're just happy and moving around and energetic and talking to their friends and talking to the staff and the house parents and so forth. That's how you know it's working. That's how you know. Because many of them, as you know, wouldn't talk to anybody when they first got there, right? So they've overcome whatever those inhibitions are. They feel comfortable. They feel at ease. They feel
safe.
Yeah, feel safe, right, exactly. And that's the environment that Palmer Home provides. And so God bless them, and kudos to the entire SuperTalk team. Knocked it out of the park yesterday, but most importantly, to the generosity, as you pointed out, of Mississippians. And let's be honest, the winners here, the winners are the children. That's who won. Bravo for them. We'll talk to Drake in the next segment about that.
The correct pronunciation for the middle name is Chitak.
Okay, so the
QUE.
QUE.
Put the emphasis on the ak.
I got you. So the QUE is silent. Ak. Ends with OQUE, right? And that is
OCQUE.
Oh, let's throw another consonant in there to really mess it up. And we're talking about former governor of the great state of Mississippi who happens to share my first name. His name is Gerard Brandon. I'm trying to figure out how he got the name Gerard, being the son of an Irish immigrant, because Gerard is a French name. It's a common name, actually, in France. Don't know. Interesting. Twice he served as governor, and we were just talking about his middle name, spelled CHITTOCQUE. That's a lot of consonants at the end that don't really amount to anything. You could have just terminated it with either just a C or a K, right, to get that same phonetic effect. But no, we got to add the QUE to it. Oh, man. Somebody on C-Spire text line said, did those portraits have bios like Trump did to the ad bios, I think Trump did to the White House? I don't recall ever seeing any bios underneath these portraits. It's really just
some of them have a little
nameplate
blurb, where it's their name, their years served, the office they served in.
That's about it. But I wouldn't.
Some of them have the years of their life on them.
That's right. But I would stop short of a full bio. Certainly, that's not the case. Ben from Madison says, independents roll their eyes when Trump obsesses over the 2020 election. He, Ben, of course, referring to the president's primetime speech last night. One of the reasons he won in a major way in 24 was because he stayed away from the, quote, stolen, end quote, election nonsense for the most part. I too felt like, Ben, that it was odd. It was rumored. We talked about it day before yesterday, a little bit yesterday, that the rumor is, you pointed it out to us, that was going to be the subject matter, the theme of the speech. It was, like a 27-minute speech, I think.
Well, the rumor was that he was going to come out and question the legitimacy of the election of the two Georgia senators.
Right.
And my takeaway from what he was talking about was there have been efforts from outside and within the government to hide information about China's involvement in obtaining voter information, private citizens' information, and using that to try to influence elections.
Yeah.
That's a big difference than coming out and saying 2020 was stolen. If you're coming out and saying they literally had evidence of China trying to influence the election, but everybody was only talking about Russia, 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 and none of this was ever presented to the person that should have been presented to, because they were all buying hook, line, and sinker the Russia, Russia, Russia crap.
Yeah. So, I have kind of mixed feelings about it, Ben, just to let you know. I think the first thing I would say is the focus to me should be on what's important to voters in the midterms. And there's no question that the cost of living, as is virtually always the case, is the top issue. And I think he feels like, based on recent inflation reports, gains in the stock market, folks are working, our unemployment rate is low. My suspicion is, after he talked about that earlier this week and highlighted those reports, that he felt like that issue's being addressed. And so he turned his attention to election integrity, which is an issue. The biggest thing that he highlighted to me that I do think is something we should focus on, it seems like the Biden government was just unwilling to even discuss this. They had information they were concealing and didn't bring it forward. That doesn't necessarily mean that it affected the outcome of the election. More so, it's, if we got foreign adversaries that are tinkering, we need to know about that, and we need to address that. Now, something I've said on the program before, Rhino, and you know about this, that my concern has always been that we have these 3,100 counties that operate these election systems, most of which, if not all, are housed on site. They're in the circuit clerk's office or whatever the equivalent is in the other states that are responsible for administering elections, and that these are IT systems that are incredibly vulnerable and have very weak cybersecurity protections. My concern has always been that an adversary such as China cripples those systems with some sort of cyber intrusion such that we could not hold elections. That would just create chaos in this country, in this world. Forget changing votes. How about not being able to vote? They could do that. I think they could do it today, but they stay away from it because it would probably prompt a pretty stiff response from this country.
The other thing to take away is China paying influencers and media shills and the talking heads in mainstream media to be friendly.
They covered it up. Coming right back with Drake Bassett.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Heck yeah, we got a little journey bumping us into this segment right now as we welcome Drake Bassett, the president and CEO of Palmer Home. Hey, Drake.
Hey, Gerard. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. What do you think? I think we had a pretty good day yesterday.
Yeah, we had a great day yesterday, and we really want to give a big shout-out to all the listeners and all the people who pull together, county by county and group by group, and people nudging their friends and just encouraging everybody to pitch in. We had a fantastic day.
Yeah, and as I said, Drake, and want you to talk about this, the winners were the children. That's who won yesterday. That's absolutely who won. We did it for them. And I know maybe folks are saying, Gerard, you keep repeating yourself, but I can't help it. When I see them come in there for lunch and they're just being kids, it touches you. It moves you. How could it not? Because you know their life hadn't always been like that.
No, that's exactly right. In fact, I got a text last night about 9 o'clock or so from Kristen, who's sort of our team captain on her team, is helps with Radiothon, and she said, "What a great day! So thankful." And she said, "And the best part was, I think our kids had the best time, And you're right. When we see them having a great time, knowing so many of the obstacles that they've had to overcome and choices that they've had to make at such an early age, and just to see them recognize that there are people out there who care for them. I mean, that's a big deal. And if you've been with us for a little while, like some of our older kids, you know how this kind of works. Some of our newer kids are like, well, what is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
And so slowly they begin to understand that, hey, this is a team effort. We work together. We're happy that, you're here and we want to provide that. We don't want you to have any worries. We don't want you to have any concerns. And so, again, the people of Mississippi and beyond stepped in yesterday to say, yep, we're right with you, and we want to help those kids. But they did have a great time.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think for us on the SuperTalk team, when you see the kids, when they come in and they're having a good time, but also the Palmer Home staff, they take such a strong interest in the day, in the event, and they're so upbeat, they're so inspired, they're so excited. I got to believe, Drake, that when we have a big banner day like we did yesterday, that it energizes them and it makes them feel good about their work.
I think so. I think, we really work at having great people, and we don't just treat that lightly. And for me, great people involves your skill set, it involves your character, but ultimately involves your passion. And if you've got passion for this work, that's going to show. And yesterday, when all these folks get together, I get a chance to see folks, I don't always get to see, and we're just, there's lots of hugs. You saw it. There's lots of care, lots of concern.
Yeah.
And it's because we want to do what's best for these kids. So staff gets energized. They're telling stories to each other about the kids' responses. Hey, we watched some kids yesterday on the radio that did a great job, by the way. I'm just so excited to see so many of our young people be willing to come out and just talk a little bit about their story.
Yeah. And
that encouraged all of us.
And we have fun with that, especially when we talk to them about their dreams, their hopes, their future plans, and sort of prompt them to think about that, discuss that. You can tell they already have. I mean, they've got a game plan for their life to a great extent already mapped out. I was just talking earlier on the show about I always got to make my pitch to them to stay in the state of Mississippi when they get to that point and they launch their professional career, because I believe they will be tremendous assets to our state, and that's what we want.
Oh, that is so great. And those kind of experiences where they get a chance to talk to people that they don't know necessarily, but kind of, like I said, yesterday afternoon, we had one young lady who a week ago wouldn't have done this at all. But she'd been to a program. She's kind of working on that, thinking about her future. And then by the time this came around, she said, I want to come on the radio. I want to tell my story. I want to talk about. So when we see these kids have that sort of excitement about their life, they feel safe to share, we know that the things that we're trying to put into the program are working. And, some of these folks need to stay around in Mississippi and keep it happening.
That's absolutely true. So what's next? What's on the horizon for Palmer Home? Are there any plans or anything coming down the pike that you can share with us?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And just to be clear, I don't know if all of our audience knows, but we wrapped the day yesterday at about $392,000.
Yeah.
And the year before, we did about $336,000. So just a big shout out to everybody reaching into their pocket and then reaching into the other pocket too. They must have to make it go a little further. So we're really thankful. But one of the things we're looking at here in the future is, and I recently scribbled an article about this, that there are a lot of kids that didn't go to Palmer Home. There are a lot of kids that went through a foster care program and they're age 18 to 24 and they're out there. And they don't really have what some of the kids that you saw yesterday will have, which is support and care along the way. And so I think Palmer Home can and should turn its light to help those children between 18 and 24. And so this year we're going to be working on creating, at a minimum, a virtual program where kids who are out there, they may be in the workforce, they may be having an apartment, maybe you don't really know. But the statistics, Gerard, are really brutal from 18 to 24. If you've been in a foster care program anywhere in the country, the stats for depression, the stats for self-inflicted harm, all that kind of stuff that really brings our spirits down, the buckets are being filled by kids 18 to 24 coming out of those kind of programs. And we want to do what we can to help any child here in Mississippi that, hey, may have gone through some program and it just did or didn't work out, or they just did what they could and then it ended at 18. But 18 is not a magic number. My kids didn't cross over into perfect adulthood, and neither did I. They need help, they need support, they need coaching, and so I think you're going to see us turn the light on that a little bit.
Okay. Well, that's good that you have the data to substantiate that you recognize that, and then you're adjusting your services and your programs to address that issue. I can see where that's the case. I mean, that none of that sounds like, yeah, that's just kind of out there. No, I think that probably is the situation, and maybe it's something about just the rapid pace of today's world and the pressures, and when you hit that age, just seems to be exacerbated. And you're not quite at that level, as you pointed out, where you're ready to manage and navigate through all that.
That's right. And so, we also talked yesterday, we've seen so much success in our transition program, age 18 to 24. And I was on the sports section yesterday, so I brought up the fact that in my mind, if we're only going to play 3 quarters, then what are we doing? The fourth quarter is so important when they do turn 18. How are they going to do? How are they going to really swim? It's almost like walking around the pool for 3 quarters. Then I was like, okay, let's see. Can you make it? Can you do it?
Yeah.
And if you can't, then we want to jump in and help you again. So I get excited about that because we've seen so many positive outcomes. Once we put some energy into that 18 to 24, we're seeing college, we're seeing technical programs, we're seeing faith communities, we're seeing these kids are grounded, and that's what creates sustainable adulthood, and that's really where we want to continue to push.
That's awesome. And so we always want to point out that Palmer Home for Children relies on private donations exclusively, that does not receive any public funding whatsoever, and that's why it's so important to have big hauls like we did yesterday as part of the radiothon, because that's your lifeblood, and you've got to have funds
that's exactly right
to operate and to deliver these services. And without those services, there's a lot of children, honestly, whose lives would never develop.
Yeah, I think that's so true. The calendar for us is July 1st every year. The bucket's empty and we start over, and that is because we're supported privately. We're not waiting on a big check from the government and regular funding and all that.
Yep.
We're waiting on the hearts and the appreciation of people.
Yep.
That's what it is. And so when you see what happened yesterday, that is so affirming, and
awesome.
And gets us off to a great start for the year, and helps us go into the school start. Man, school is starting sooner and sooner these days, but we're excited that we're ready to go for the school year and for all the things that are coming, and it just makes a difference. That
we got to get going, Drake. Appreciate it, man. Congratulations.
Yep.
Thanks for coming on. Coming right back, folks. Appreciate it, Drake.
Thanks a lot.
You
Good
bet.
to see you.
Coming right back.
For all your glad me.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, we are back with you. We're in the Element Wealth studio. We appreciate Drake Bassett, President and CEO of Palmer Home, for sharing his thoughts on yesterday's Radiothon, which was a huge success, topping the prior year, setting a record, but of course, put a little pressure on us to get a 400 handle in the front number next year. 392,000 and change, the final tally. Big day, no doubt about it. Enjoyed being there with you and the entire SuperTalk team. And as you know, it takes a lot to organize all that, put that together. So though you may only hear those of us on the air, a whole bunch of people behind the scenes are making that happen, and we appreciate them as well. It is indeed a team effort. It's a privilege. It's an honor to be part of this team, to do something good for the children of Mississippi who need it the most, honestly. You know, you can't help but think, Rhino, about the kids that are in difficult circumstances, that need help, that are still out there, hoping, waiting for something to break so that they can get the help they need and into the stable, safe environment so necessary to develop into a happy, hopeful, productive adult. But be happy and hopeful and live a good life when you're a child. That's what they deserve, and that's what Palmer Home offers to those that need just a little help there. So we appreciate that. Meanwhile, the legislature, they wrapped up the business of passing a youth court bill. It was not without controversy, however. You know, they were in session late Tuesday night. And I believe it was Tuesday night. I'm losing sight of the days, track of the days here with the travel. Wednesday night. Okay, yeah. This is Friday. That's right. Wednesday night before our Radiothon. And again, as we pointed out, the House was at the old Capitol, the Senate, where they normally meet in the main operational Capitol. And it took a while. 200-page bill. By the time it got amended in the Senate, that's where it started, and over to the House, another 20 pages were added. There were some that complained about the short time frame and the length of the bill and felt like they needed more time to digest it. But this has been going on a while, so they've had some time, I would say, to review the main provisions of the legislation. It wasn't all just drafted that day and brand new.
It's like the fourth or fifth time basically the exact same language has attempted to be passed.
So it's been out there.
Yeah.
And it imposes implements a slew of changes to the youth court system, child welfare cases, criminal prosecution of children, deals with that. And the youth court system now, this is what the governor wanted, was full-time judges in the youth courts throughout the state. So what it will do is install these chancellors in the chancery courts who will handle youth cases. Now, we kind of have a mixed bag right now. That's part of the problem. It's somewhat dysfunctional. There's no standards, certainly in the judicial structure. Right now we have these positions known as youth court referees, and that's to take some of the burden off of existing judges. These are just lawyers appointed to hear some of the cases. Sometimes even in circuit court, you'll have the appointment by a judge of what's called a special master. And that would just be a lawyer that would try to work things out, kind of serve as sort of a prejudge, if you will, to try to get things hammered out, usually in business disputes like that, so as not to clog the courts up when you get businesses and consumers sometimes. And so they'll appoint a special master to get involved and serve kind of in a judicial role to administer those cases. Senator Bryce Wiggins, who's heavily involved in this issue, characterized the current practice in the current system as a system of hodgepodge, speaking specifically about these referees, that, as they are called, that are appointed by judges. They're called family masters now. A new position codified in the law will help pick up the slack in the counties where there's just a long docket, and that's designed to handle emergency hearings if they can't get before the court, because you may have some circumstances where you need to act now. Could be a safety issue, honestly. So that's primarily what happened. So county youth courts would largely be eliminated under the bill. Counties with fewer than 50,000 people that elect to run their own youth courts will be asked if they want to join the chancery courts, where you've got these new youth court chancellors. If the Board of Supervisors says, no, we don't want to do that, we want our own, they got to pay for it. State won't pay for it anymore. I support this provision. I think that makes sense. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming your way, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Of MidDays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. MidDays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of MidDays on this
Friday, y'all.
All right. We have uncovered the answer to Diarrhea Gate. The old Taco Bell, the outbreak of, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, cyclosporiasis? Did I say
Something
that right?
Like that.
It turns out the cause, if you hadn't heard about this, folks, people were having really bad digestive problems after ingesting food from the Taco Bell.
Yeah, the words explosive were being used. The word explosive.
Exactly. It turns out, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that the culprit is some iceberg lettuce grown by Taylor Farms, which supplies the taco chain, Taco Bell.
In fairness to T-Bell, I think it was also impacting bagged salads.
Oh, okay.
At certain groceries.
Okay. But it's only this one farm has been named that I've seen. So it has had all kinds of downstream effects. I mean, from Taco Bell sales being down to people just staying away from buying iceberg lettuce. I mean, just all the other related.
I mean, yeah,
actions.
you can point to the bad press and Taco Bell numbers going down, but I feel like you can't blame it entirely on Taco Bell causing gastrointestinal distress, because, well, that tends to happen for about half the people that eat Taco Bell, even without contaminated lettuce.
Yeah.
It's not an unusual occurrence to experience gastrointestinal distress after eating Taco Bell.
Well, would you attribute that maybe to sensitivity to the spices, perhaps, or what do you think? I mean, tomato and lettuce and tortilla?
I mean, T-Bell is also infamous for getting in trouble for having lower grades of beef and not having the most appetizing of setups.
Okay. Well, it's been kind of a mystery for a while, right? Because it's been all over the national news, and then finally yesterday they said, we got it. We found it's the iceberg lettuce. I didn't see that one coming. I mean, lettuce, just leafy green vegetable that's mostly water, it feels like.
Which is why it's susceptible to stuff like this.
Okay.
Because the I had it pulled up. The Cyclospora cayetanensis is the parasite. It's microscopic.
Okay.
And it's often found in contaminated or tainted water, which also shows up in fresh produce that are majority water.
That makes sense. All right. But you've also seen it's having a further impact extending into other fruits and vegetables. People are just staying away from that as well. We're seeing a decrease in purchase and consumption of those products. So
you've got the T-Bell outbreak, as it's being called, the Taco Bell outbreak this year. A couple years ago, you had the E. coli outbreak involving romaine lettuce. And I think that wound up actually killing somebody. I don't know if it was as talked about as this one, but then again, it doesn't have Taco Bell associated with it.
Yeah.
And you go back like a year or two before that, it was the listeria craze because of, I think it was 1 or 2 farms that had an outbreak. And then a couple years before that, I think it was another E. coli. It seems like every few years there's something wrong with somebody's lettuce.
Well, it certainly has gotten a lot of attention. No doubt about that.
Jason in Starkville, I'll be eating Taco Bell today because y'all are making me hungry. Then he goes, their beef is cheap meat.
Okay. Oh, well, still considered beef, though, right? Even though it might be. Oh, well, we'll get past this. I feel confident. Your market's a quick check there, not looking good. A sell-off. Concerns about chip makers. Of course, it's been earnings season, and all the earnings have been strong. And by the way, profits, despite what the left in this country say, are the mother's milk of stocks. And earnings season is proven to be quite fruitful across all sectors. We've seen strong earnings, year-over-year increases across the board. But the NASDAQ's experiencing a bit of a sell-off, down 292 points. It was in the red over 500 points at the opening bell. And the
Do you
Dow,
think it's a bit unusual there hasn't been any bounce on the IBM stock?
Yes, it's lasted a little longer. And if you didn't hear about that, Big Blue is predicting the big blues from the profit outlook. And that's what got folks selling their stock. They had a terrible day earlier this week as a result of that guidance. It has not rebounded yet. And basically what they're saying is that there's kind of a shifting in customer demand away from some of the core business that has powered the company for decades and more into new technologies. They're involved in those new technologies, but it's taking a little time for that to catch up. So I guess the bottom line is those new technologies, rather than being incremental to their existing base business, they're needing that to replace erosion of their existing base business. That was kind of the message, and investors didn't like that, and they immediately hit the sell button on Big Blue. So, and that, anytime you have a major company like that that's a big Dow component that has a bad day, that, of course, proliferates the rest of the industry, the Dow itself. Just looking today at big tech, they're all in the red. Apple down $2 and change, almost $3. NVIDIA as well, around the $204 mark. And Apple, once again, Rhino, because of the sell-off of NVIDIA the last few weeks, which I think is overblown, honestly. Apple, once again, the world's most valuable company because it's actually had a run-up. The investors are feeling better about their AI strategy, about their device outlook and strategy.
They finally did what everybody's been saying for 3.5 years, since all this AI stuff even started becoming an inkling or twinkling in an eye.
Yeah.
they were saying, hey, Apple, you've got this assistant that you've pumped a whole lot of time and money into, and it's not using AI.
That's right.
And then they turn around and go, hey, let's put Siri and AI together. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
People appreciated it.
So it's trading at $330 a share, down $3, but it's had a pretty good run this week. Your old funny money, it's bouncing all over the place too, isn't it? I hadn't seen the latest on that. What are we, around $63,000, $64,000?
Yeah, I hadn't checked it in the last
talking about
days.
Bitcoin. So the 10-year Treasury, it's down today as well. That, of course, drives your long-term. Yep, 63,000. It just crossed the wire. Down 662 today. The Dow was down considerably earlier in the day. It's down 88 points at this time. So it actually had a little bit of time in the green and crossing over the unchanged line. So that's kind of what's going on with your markets. We were just talking about the president's primetime address last night, focused on this revelation that our federal level agencies knew about really capturing information about voters. That's about the extent of it at this point. Really wasn't anything that came out that said, yeah, we have more proof, if you will, that China changed vote outcomes or changed votes and thus election outcomes. Really no further evidence or talk about that, but more about just highlighting concerns, and I agree with the president on this, that, yeah, they were able to, like North Carolina was used as an example. Now, the information you get from voter rolls is not like your deep, dark, private secrets. It's your name, your address, a little bit, maybe your driver's license number or something like that. It's a minimal amount of information that are stored by government for purposes of voter records. But it is a concern that they're able to penetrate these systems, which I think further illustrates the point I was making earlier. That means they could take them down. They were able to capture that information. We should be taking note of that, folks. If they wanted to and they shut those systems down, we can't have elections. Forget about protecting the integrity of the election. How about holding an election? That's what we ought to be worried about, which is also another reason why we cannot allow them to achieve superiority in quantum computing. But what they prove here, Rhino, they don't even need quantum power to get into our terribly protected, weak protections around our election systems. We've known this for a long time because every dang county in America just hasn't addressed that. They don't have the resources. And oftentimes
the weakest link in the chain is a not my problem person
Good
being
point.
paid by your tax dollars.
Good point. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio, it's Caleb Sailors.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Caleb Sailors, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Thought you forgot my name there for a second, Gerard.
I was just reading something. I'm
like,
sorry for
good
that.
grief. We've gotten pretty close over the years, Gerard. I mean, we took a plane ride together to Dallas, going to Phoenix. I mean, gosh, yeah. I consider you a friend, Gerard.
No, it was planned cadence in the delivery is what it was.
I was like, good grief! I guess I'm just chopped liver.
It was an intentional pause. right, to call attention to your joining us here in the studio. So, all right, Caleb, what do you got for a special session? I guess that's the main thing going on. We've been talking about it here in the state of Mississippi. Some midnight oil burned down at the old Capitol and the new Capitol.
Yes, especially at the new Capitol 2 nights ago. And you talk about, bringing attention to a matter. We had, the order called in both the current state Capitol where the Senate was meeting and the old Capitol where the House is meeting. For those who may not know, the House of Representatives had to meet in the old Capitol during this week's special session because its quarters are being renovated right now in the current state Capitol. So it was crazy. For the first time since 1903, we had a bill pass, or we had legislation pass in the old Capitol building. So kind of a historic moment there. Pretty cool for Mississippi. But the special session, as the governor outlined on Tuesday going into Wednesday, had to do with reforming Mississippi's youth courts. We had a couple of statutes that were very relevant that were about transparency and disclosure of records and whatnot. I won't get bogged down in the minutia there, but that had expired. They expired on June 30th. And so this subjected Mississippi to lawsuits. And of course, Mississippi did get sued, and the governor expressed frustration that, I'm over here getting sued in federal court and state court, and, because the legislature didn't address this matter during the regular session. Now, there was legislation to extend these statutes to keep the process going the way it was, that ultimately didn't pass on a couple of occasions, and there was politics behind it. I know Senator Bryce Wiggins has been on your show and explained the politics of what happened, and so I won't get long-winded there. So the state Supreme Court had to step in when these statutes expired with a temporary order kind of reviving them and letting them be state law for the time being, so that way the state, one, wouldn't be exposed to lawsuits, and two, that documentation could be sent and received from the youth court system, from the Department of Child Protection Services, Department of Human Services, etc. Well, the governor saw this as an opportunity to push a sweeping youth court reform. And this wasn't just Governor Reeves doing this. The governor said, hey, when I took office, I wanted to fix Mississippi's financial problems. I didn't know I was going to be getting into the youth court situation, but this was an issue presented to me, and this is something that's important for the state of Mississippi. And after conversations with judges, leaders within DHS, leaders within CPS, this is something that we need to fix. And so he brought leadership from the House and Senate together, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, who presides over the Senate, House Speaker Jason White, and Judiciary Committee leadership together, and they worked on this in the off season, and they got this bill introduced, and it eventually got passed. So now what it does, though, is it creates full-time judges for youth court cases in areas where they don't have them, right? There's only 24 counties with a full-time judge assigned to youth court cases. So in these other counties, these judges get bogged down with all these cases. Sometimes they can't address the youth court cases, so they appoint what they call referees, which sometimes are local attorneys, to oversee these cases. Well, this legislation gets rid of that. There's full-time judges assigned to these cases, and those in favor of the legislation say, yes, this is very important. This will protect our children that are in, child abuse cases or custody cases, et cetera, that involve the youth courts. And then there's a public safety element to the proposal that got passed, Gerard, where we're adding more money to the Oakley Youth Detention Center in Hinds County. I believe that's $12 million to add more capacity there to lock up violent youth, who are those convicted of committing violent crimes. And then there's a commitment to the Department of Public Safety to the tune of $10 million to create 2 more youth detention facilities, one in North Mississippi, one in South Mississippi. Now, it's going to take more than $10 million.
Where are they going now?
Oakley, and sometimes
just Oakley,
or they just get turned back.
Yeah,
to the
I think
street.
They're just getting released,
and that's what the governor was stating was a huge problem in Mississippi. He said he's had conversations with Department of Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tyndall and sheriffs from across the state, and they're saying, we've got a youth crime problem, and we need to do something about it, because if they're not tried as adults, we don't have anywhere to put them, because Oakley's usually at capacity, and it can only hold, 150 youth?
It's been around a long time.
It's been around a long time. So now they're trying to create more facilities. So one, it won't cost the counties as much money to house these youth, and then there'll be places to put them too. Now, the legislature did kind of remedy some of the concerns with where to house youth during the regular session by saying if you're between 15 and 18. You're under 18, but you're at the age of 15 and you commit a gun crime, you can and will be charged as an adult. So the state did remedy that to a degree where they can be put in the adult detention facilities, but it'll also help to have actual designated facilities in North and South Mississippi for youth, according to the governor.
Well, it's a good thing.
You can read more about this bill. I won't get all into it at supertalk.fm. There was heated debate. A lot of lawmakers were ticked off about the way the process played out. They didn't want it to go into a special session, and some
the privacy issue. Talk about that, because the Democrats really had some serious concerns about that.
So the legislation allows there to be open courts at the discretion of judges. So it's not like every case will have an open court. Like the public can't just go.
So it doesn't mandate it or compel it.
No.
It's discretionary.
It's discretionary. Now there is
what's current law? It's not open whatsoever?
It is very difficult to have an open court case in Mississippi youth courts. And
so the change is that it's at their discretion, the judge's discretion.
And sometimes the courts being closed prohibits like a foster parent from testifying on a child's behalf, or a biological parent saying, hey, I am accused of doing these things, but I didn't do them. But since the court is closed, they may not have the opportunity to do that. And so now this allows for more transparency. But again, it's at the judge's discretion. And there was even some amendments that would prohibit media from going in there and recording children that were victims of abuse and whatnot. So, I mean, they crossed their T's and dotted their I's there. You had a lot. I mean, the Senate looked at this before the House did, because every lawyer in the state of Mississippi decides to run for Senate. I'm joking there, but we had a lot of lawyers looking at this matter. I mean, listening to the Judd A committee, it was like Senator Nicole Akins-Boyd and Bryce Wiggins and Jeremy England, all these attorneys that were speaking a lot of legalese, but they got it worked out, and the bill is passed, and the governor's expected to sign it ASAP.
So, and there were some rumblings maybe that they may persuade the governor to take up PBM reform.
Yeah,
right?
The House,
right at the end there.
The House kind of hijacked the funding portion, because they passed the general bill, then they had to pass the appropriations. Right, $29.5 million. Well, the House was like, hey, why don't we do PBM? We got this right now. We're not going to pass this until you put PBM on the agenda. We're so close to an agreement. We've got House Speaker Jason White and Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann in agreement here, which you know that is not always the case. And so, hey, we can get this across the finish line. Ultimately, the House, kind of said, no, we're not going to push the envelope on this. But it looked like for a minute that they were trying to get the governor's ear and say, hey, we will hold this bill hostage until you put PBM on the agenda, or PBM reform on the agenda. That ultimately didn't happen, and so they'll probably address PBM reform either in the upcoming session, or unless there's a special session called on it too. We could see that happening as well.
Okay. Well, ultimately that did not happen, so they're all out.
Right.
Die out.
Yep, they're out.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to worry about
till they come back in January.
Yep.
That's when you got to hold your wallet.
Well, we'll probably have a special session at the end of this year for redistricting.
Yeah.
It's at the legislative level, so that way because I know they're going to try to go back to the old legislative map that allowed the Republicans to have the supermajority in the Senate.
The governor has certainly hinted that.
Oh,
for sure.
Yes.
Give us an update on this Nolan Wells situation.
So the funeral for Nolan Wells, the 18-year-old that died at Horn Island on the 4th of July, very tragic story there. We still don't have all the details. The toxicology report and the autopsies are still pending, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office is still investigating, so we're not going to go into any speculation on what could have happened in this case. We will not do that at SuperTalk.fm or SuperTalk News. So what we know, though, is that the funeral was originally planned to take place at the Mississippi Coast Convention, the Mississippi Coast Coliseum.
Yeah.
Getting my words right.
Yeah.
That ended up falling through. They're not going to have the funeral there. Instead, it's going to be at Centerpoint Church in Ocean Springs on July 20th. Then there will be a celebration of life at the fairgrounds in Jackson County afterward.
Okay. Our sports guys are going to be at SEC Media Days. When does that come up?
That's next week. We'll be there all week, and I'll even be there, too, on the news side of things.
Oh, good for you. Going to be there in Tampa.
In Tampa, yes, sir.
Hard to believe it's already here. Man,
we're getting there.
All right. Appreciate you coming in. Caleb Sailors, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. Have a good weekend and have a good trip down to Tampa.
Thank you, Gerard. I appreciate it.
Yep. Coming right back in the Element Wealth Studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone, on the C Spire text line. SEC Football Media Day starts on Monday. We will not be going, but as you just heard, Caleb Sailors will be joining the SuperTalk Mississippi Sports Talk team. They're going to be down there, and I'm pretty sure they'll be calling in and giving us some reports from Tampa, where all the SEC coaches will be gathered, and they'll be talking to the media about the upcoming football season. You know, I got to point this out as well. Something that is developing in college sports that I felt like was ultimately where we're headed for some time, and that is that I think it's University of North Carolina, or is it NC State? No, it's North Carolina. They have just created, if you guys hadn't heard this, a separate corporate LLC, limited liability corporation. In other words, a private incorporation, a company that is structured it is a private company structured as a private entity, not a department within a university organization for their athletic department. So they're breaking out their athletic department into a private entity. I have felt this was coming for quite some time and often got dismissed and even laughed at a bit 15 years ago when I said, I think all this college athletics world is going to be privatized. So I believe this is another step towards that. The NIL was a huge step towards that. I think we're headed to a point where these college athletes won't be a requirement that they are students, that they're just going to play. That's what I believe is coming. People may dispute that. Also, Utah State is looking at selling their athletic department to a private equity firm. So I think that's the direction we're headed here, where college sports will be privatized, where the players will be employees of the private entities. There won't be much of a need for athletic departments. The schools will essentially franchise the athletics to private organizations who will pay them typical franchise relationship structure royalties. They'll run it, collect all the revenue, they'll pay all the expenses, and they'll have some royalty calculation as part of that agreement, and they'll just cut a check to the schools for that. The experience and everything that we're accustomed to will remain the same, except I do believe that the students or the players will no longer necessarily have to be students.
I wonder how that would impact Title IX.
I don't know, but that's always been a holdup in any kind of reforms in college athletics. Probably the biggest one was what it did to baseball, limiting the number of scholarships significantly, severely, and all in the name of Title IX. I don't know, because you're right. If you're a private company and you're running the athletic department, you're looking at the bottom line, you're probably thinking about cutting, right? Some of those sports that are bleeding money, not producing money. It's a problem. But it's also a concern, as you know, for athletic departments. Right now, they're trying to grapple with that. We ain't got enough money coming in. So now you got some where There's plenty of money coming in, but it's going to the NIL programs, to the collectives, to pay the players, not to the athletic departments or the institutions for their needs in operating college sports, which is why I think this is where we're headed. But I agree with you. That's a big question, and that is something that's yet to be answered and resolved, because if you start running things like a business, yeah, government doesn't have to do that. They can lose money operating sports that don't stand on their own 2 feet, get subsidized by other sports, honestly. It's what happens.
And are, frankly, mandated by Title IX in order to have the revenue.
That's right. Exactly
sports.
Right. So, when taxpayers have...
That's why you don't have any SEC teams with men's soccer teams.
Okay, I didn't know that.
You have women's soccer teams.
Yep.
Because it helps balance out the Title IX numbers.
That's right. I get it.
And I'm not a huge proponent for college soccer being a great way to grow the sport in the country as far as a talent level, but if you're a soccer player, a male soccer player, playing anywhere in the footprint of the Southeastern Conference, you can't stay home and continue your education and get a scholarship and play soccer.
Yeah.
Because you're a dude.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So when you look at the numbers, you're trying to balance out. So let's lose a little money here in women's soccer so that
you got to make up 50-something from football.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the model that's in place now. So there's also rumors, get this, that LSU and the governor are talking to private equity firms about taking over that program. That would be massive. Now, nothing concrete, but I bet there's something going on. Governor Landry, he of course got involved in the whole Lane Kiffin saga last year. We'll see what happens, but I just feel like this is where we're headed. I really do. And I know there's some people out there that may not like that. I'm not saying I necessarily like it either. I just believe that's the practical reality of college sports. And what really, I think, even solidified this path was the whole NIL deal. When it went from, well, come play football here and we give you a room and a bag of potato chips, essentially, to, oh, yeah, come play here and we got this collective thing over here. How does $5 million a year sound? I mean, literally it changed overnight like that. To the point.
It came into the light.
Well, we legitimized it.
Many programs across the country, programs in this very state, who were forking over millions of dollars to student athletes under the table.
That's absolutely true. I mean, that's been going on for decades, as you know. And it's not unique to any program, any size program, any school.
But when it wasn't legitimized, it was off the books. Therefore, it was not a part of the calculation for the athletics budget.
Exactly. I'll say this, though. I think the numbers are way bigger since it's been legitimized.
Well, of course, because you have people that are willing to put in on it that were unwilling to risk
That's right.
exposure for breaking rules or even the law.
Totally right. I recall a situation that, and you got compliance people in all these athletic departments, as you well know, and so the whole financial aspect of it is almost a non-issue these days when you consider the collective and the NIL. And I can tell you that when my son was even in middle school, going into high school, and he would accompany us, of course, to the games up in Oxford to our suite. He'd bring friends, and these would be athletes. And the compliance people would always want to know, like, are we doing something sort of special to host these people? I said, they're my son's friends. They spend the night with each other. I get it. You have to be super careful with that. And so we got to the point, my wife and I, where we'd call them and let them know, we're just letting you know that we're bringing our son and one of his friends, that we're not hosting recruits illegally in our suite here. Oh, man. I understand, though. You got to be super cautious because, you got people, they're taking pictures and sending them to the SEC office or the NCAA. They got recruits in the boosters. They're eating hamburgers in the boosters box. I'm not exaggerating either. So, all that's changed considerably is the point. It's just interesting watching all this and how it's evolving. It made me think about it with SEC Media Days coming up. Because, there'll be discussions about how's your NIL program looking and, what's your budget look like for your players, which was just not too long ago wasn't even thought of as a legitimate question.
And the other angle to remember is that while the number is likely small, the number is not zero of big budget boosters that were paying under the table because they knew they could be the top dog or maybe one of the top dogs in that scene that have shied away from NIL because their pocketbook isn't as big as some other people that are now willing to do it legitimately. They've lost their big dog status, so they walked away from it.
That's absolutely true. Because there was like a badge of honor associated with that, right? Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Poly up a miss.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, we've been talking about football season around the corner. SEC Media Days get underway on the 20th, next Monday, the 20th through the 23rd. The unofficial start to the college football season. Sports Talk Mississippi will be live in Tampa, and so will Caleb Sailors from our news department. That's starting on Monday to get you ready for the biggest event of the offseason. That's SEC Media Days, brought to you by, in part, Pearl River Resort, Cannon Motors, Mississippi Farm Bureau, and Trustmark Bank. We, of course, appreciate their sponsorship for SEC Media Days. I feel quite certain that Brian Haydad and Caleb will give us a call next week during middays to provide an update of the activities there in Tampa. In fact, Brian told me yesterday, I think Ole Miss and LSU are both on the same day. Is that right? Mississippi State on Wednesday, LSU, Ole Miss Thursday?
I think it's State, LSU Thursday, and Ole Miss is on Wednesday.
Okay. I'm sorry. I got that schedule wrong, but I think he is he's going to be there, of course. He does a rather entertaining Lane Kiffin impersonation as well. He broke out into it.
He's got a few impressions in the bag.
He's good at that. Yeah, he pulled out into that yesterday, and it was kind of funny. I was laughing. That was at the Palmer home. I think you were getting your beard shaved at that time, maybe. On today's episode of In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with former NBA All-Star and member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, Alex English. You can listen to In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Man, I tell you, that Azar, he hangs around with some world-class athletes. He's really good at shaking them down to help with his charitable organizations. They all come in for his big annual golf tournament there in the Delta in Greenville, and he's gotten to know so many of these folks through the years, and they're always real good about coming on the show, and they do provide some perspective and some insight that you can't get when you're watching guys like Alex English on the NBA court, and they talk about some of their personal history and background, and it is fascinating. And Steve does a good job with that. So,
speaking of big wigs and famous people, I do have some sad news to pass on that has a Mississippi connection.
Yeah?
Brenda Fricker, an Irish actress, won an Oscar for her Best Supporting Actress in My Left Foot back in 1990, I think, maybe 89. She was also the secretary for the lawyer in the film filmed in Canton in the Magnolia State of Time to Kill.
Oh, yeah.
She was the foster mom in Angels in the Outfield. She was the pigeon lady in Home Alone 2.
Yeah.
Sadly passed away at the age of 81.
Wow. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, a great actress as well.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt about it. William and Brandon sent, let's see, I'm looking here, sent a screenshot, looks like a Twitter post. I can't tell who the name is, but some lady named Sophie.
Sophie Cunningham.
Oh, Sophie Cunningham, thank you.
WNBA star.
Ah, I got you.
Kind of went viral recently for
I didn't know this.
Pointing.
Oh, yeah. I have seen that. Right. She posted, so how do we save our farmland and stop all these dumb data centers? All right, so who is that responded, Rhino? Just TJ?
Random Twitter dude.
A random Twitter dude.
Yeah,
okay.
That's just a random Twitter dude.
Okay. He said, well, we're going to have to do things that make weak people cry. I'd be willing to discuss this further with you over a fancy dinner at Chili's. 2 entrees, $20, my treat. That's pretty good.
Shoot.
That is pretty good. You think we'll get all our money back, says John in Pontotoc. I'm trying to look at the time. What were we talking about then?
Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss buyout.
Gotcha. I don't know about that, John. Joey the trucker says, Gerard, that's diesel fuel going up and gasoline on the counter. On the counter. Though fight over there is BS. I know it's on a global market. When I was in the gas business, I know what they're doing. What are they doing, Joey? Are you suggesting that they're charging? I guess this is where I have issues with this. Is do they not have the right to charge whatever they want? It's not like they have a captive market or that they have a monopoly. So if you don't like that price, go down the street. I see it varying quite a bit here around town. So what should they charge? What should the gross margin be? Nobody ever answers that question. But I know from financial statements that they don't make squat. Talking about retailers that sell gas. In fact, unless you go in the store and buy something, they really didn't make any money when you put gas in your tank there. They want you to come in and buy stuff they do make money on. And in fact, that's why we went from having gas stations that just pump gas and maybe did a little oil and convenience stores
with a pack of pork rinds on a little pull thing right by the door. That's the only groceries in there.
That's why we have these big super convenience stores, because the model didn't work, and they gave way. Coming right back after Fox News Super Talk News.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays on this
Friday, y'all.
And it's the day after the annual Palmer Home for Children Radiothon. We're still pretty excited about that around here, folks, because the Jam Up Super Talk team, both facing you on the mic and behind the scenes, just did an absolutely incredible job of hauling in $392,000, setting a record. That's what, Rhino, some $60,000 more than last year, but certainly positioning us to set our goal with the 4 handle in the front there. 400,000, but man, what a day. Appreciate all the efforts of everyone, in particular our fabulous audience who heeded the call, reached into their pockets, as Drake said. Drake Bassett, CEO of Palmer Home, they reached into both pockets this year, and we are super appreciative of that. And I promise, folks, those of you who help us out here, you can rest assured that your donation is being put to good use, helping out these children. So we just wanted to highlight that as another one is in the books. 14th Annual Radiothon. It's also pretty cool, Rhino. It certainly bears highlighting this again. We've got two special funds, one for our colleagues, both of which are no longer with us. One you worked with for many years, the great J.T. Williamson, that hosted this time slot for a number of years, was so passionate about the Palmer Home, and you talked about that yesterday. And then also the late, great Paul Gallo, who is an icon in Mississippi talk radio, no longer with us, but also one who really felt strongly about doing good for the Palmer Home. And I shared it yesterday, folks, in our headquarters here in the hall, just a few steps from where we're sitting. They're hanging on the walls there, the main hall that really separates the studio from where the news department is. A lot of framed photos of past Palmer Homes. You're included in there as well, as is JT and Paul Gallo and the Palmer Home team, just like we do every year. And everybody with smiles after a big day of hauling in a bunch of dough for the Palmer Home. And so those memories are still with us of certainly of JT and Paul. They've just got big smiles on their face because they know that they just delivered for the Palmer Home for Children. So I appreciate you highlighting that as well yesterday, your experience with JT and playing a little clip where he talked about it. So I believe he's smiling down from heaven, as is Paul Gallo, and they're happy and they're pleased with the efforts here of this company and what it does in its chosen philanthropy, Palmer Home for Children. On the C-Spire text line, Joey the Truckers says, when I was in the gas business, you can't go higher than 50 cents. I think he means 50 cents over landed cost. If you bought gas at $1, you can't go higher than $1.50. Just like if you paid $1 for your gas and then went and bought some and you give a 50 cent. I'm not quite following you here, Joey. So I guess my question is, Joey, there's no federal or state laws that dictate. There's no fair trading dictated federal or state impositions on what a retailer can charge for gas that I'm aware of. I don't think there are any regulations to that effect. That may have been like an agreement you had with the distributor, with the supplier. Those are legal. Those are private agreements. I can understand that. But I will also point out that somebody said, they don't make any money. And, didn't make any money. That's on the 601 on the C-Spire text line. So the point I was making is, before we went to break, is that in that industry, really talking about retail petroleum marketing, if you will, which now I don't know that there are any more just gas stations that just exclusively sell gas and oil. I mean, there may be a few out there. I don't know the last time I saw them, but that's evolved into this whole convenience store industry.
Even in some of the most remote parts out west, they've generally transitioned to include a convenience stop.
Okay.
But many of them, you don't even have an attendant at the convenience store. It's literally just a room with doors on it and a bunch of vending machines inside.
Okay. Well,
but they're even in those remote locations, a lot of the business model is made up by providing that convenience because the profit margin on just the fuel is so low that it wouldn't really be all that cost effective to have a gas station that far out in the boonies.
15 cents a gallon is the average gross margin. So if a gross margin that is realized by the retailer. So if they sell it for $2, they paid $1.85, and they make 15 cents. Then they got to pay all the expenses associated with being in that business and delivering the gas. In general, the industry reports, and this is from public financial statements, that they make about 2 cents per gallon in profit. And it really doesn't matter what the retail price is. That model stays in place. It slides with it. And so when you look at what you're paying for gas and you looked at, okay, well, where does that money go? A teeny tiny bit of it goes to the actual retailer. The rest of it goes behind the scenes to the distributors, to the producers, to the refiners. I mean, there's a big supply chain and ecosystem involved in production of fuel.
That's why it's going to cost you $2.50, $3, sometimes more for that Snickers bar that you could get at the Wally World for $1.25.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I'm not for price controls. I do not support the government stepping in and dictating what any company sells goods or services for. Those have never worked, and they certainly won't work in the petroleum industry at any level of the petroleum industry as well. In fact, oil, the crude oil, the raw material there, is traded on commodities markets, global commodities markets. On the C Spire text line, Jerry in Pontotoc says, "You do a great job, Gerard, but I still miss JT." Appreciate that, Jerry. We do too. Let's see, James in Hattiesburg. Same concept as using the restaurant industry. Food has a lot lower profit margin than liquor. That's why they want you to buy liquor, because there's a 30 to 40% margin instead of lower than 10%, sometimes 3 to 4 on the food. Absolutely. I'm familiar with that as well, James, and you're right. And it's not just liquor, James, as you know, but beverages in general just carry a higher profit margin. And then the other big one, Rhino, that I've never personally reviewed that in financial statements, but I've been told by those in that business, is desserts. So if you're that's kind of a premium on that. But people, if they want dessert,
that's why generally if you get a full cake or full pie from a restaurant, you're going to pay through the nose.
Ooh, yeah,
because you're taking something off of their shelf that they can make a lot of profit on. So they're going to take all the profit out of it they can.
Yep, and that's probably still, even though it's a price that's through the roof and super elevated,
it's cheaper than buying it by the piece.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. But let's think about it. When you're in a restaurant and you decide to have dessert, you really don't care what it costs, generally speaking. You just kind of have a craving and urging for it. I've always thought that restaurants that are kind of known for their desserts probably have a better overall financial performance because everybody comes in and buys desserts. I've always thought, like the Steak and Shake, for example, was one where you're just going to have a shake, that's what they're known for, right? So, but nonetheless, that's just kind of a high-level analysis of those various industries. But
I'm trying to find the list. I know there's a list of states that do have wonky laws about the price of gas, but it's not how you think. I do know it's like the Midwest, like Minnesota and Wisconsin, and then Oklahoma, and I want to say the closest one to Mississippi is Alabama, but I can't find the full list. But there are states that have price controls on gas, but it limits how low they can price their gas.
Yeah,
it limits them from making it a loss leader like you have at the Wally World with the milk at the back of the store, that they're losing a penny on the gallon, but they got you to walk through the whole store to go get it.
You know what else I think is like that? It's tobacco.
Yeah.
Tobacco products. You have a minimum price. Right.
You can't go under cost.
That's exactly right. And a lot of that is to protect against the taxes imposed on. You have a black market for tobacco if they don't have that stamp on it.
And it's protectionism for the higher...
Exactly right.
Higher charging smaller businesses that have to charge more to stay in business.
I don't like the price controls, period, just for the record. I get it. I understand the intent, but I always think that it produces negative consequences. Coming right back.
Attention, adoring fans!
It's time for Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
was appropriate a couple of weeks ago. 4th of July in the park. Saturday in the park, Chicago. Great tune. Awesome. Appreciate that, Rhino. So, on the C-Spire text line, Brian in Clarksdale says, Radiothon, y'all did a wonderful job, guys and gals. I watched most of that. So, the Radiothon, he says. So Rhino, I was getting gas last night in Oxford on the way back after I spoke there. And I know you've had this happen as well, and an individual was next to me. I went inside to use the restroom and came back out to my vehicle. Hey, are you Gerard? And of course, acknowledged that, shook hand, and shook this individual's hand, and we got to talking. They were talking about the Radiothon and just how much they enjoy the program. And by the way, this person lives in the Delta and said, we get so little news coverage up here that we tune in to find out what's going on, especially during the legislative session. This person is a business person that pays attention to legislation, especially that which could affect his business, his industry. And he said, really enjoy the fact that you guys break all that down for us and inform us. And so that's what we do. That's our pleasure to do that. And I guess sitting in the center of all this like you and I do, we sometimes forget about folks that might be in parts of our state where they just don't get the news. They don't get exposed. So it's good to hear that feedback, I would say. And, of course, that was about the entire network, not just this show. But so appreciate that, folks. That tells us that what we're doing is of value, and that's the main thing.
Mike, because I sat down with the video people there yesterday at the Radiothon.
Yeah.
They were asking me a couple questions. And one of the questions they asked me, it took me a second to process it because I hadn't thought about it. It was just something I did. But they asked, what's the difference in preparing for a normal day at the office versus preparing for the Radiothon? And the only thing I could think of was, preparing for a normal day at the office is like cramming for a test last minute.
That's right.
Because it's due the next day. But everything is getting funneled into the hopper to get digested and looked at and at least glanced over. So it's cramming for a test. Whereas the night before Palmer Home, getting ready for Palmer Home, it's more like a meditation or a long prayer where you're trying to get in the mindset of, I am trying to do what I can to help the most people. And then it hit me. I was like, I'm doing the same thing, just in a different avenue. I'm trying to help people understand something versus I'm trying to help raise money to help kids. It's still helping.
That's right. And that's what this is all about. That's absolutely right. And so we don't take that responsibility lightly. And so we appreciate the feedback. And I appreciate this individual giving a shout out there when I was walking out. Hey, are you Gerard? Pumping gas there. And that was kind of cool. And I'm glad to hear the positive feedback and listened to the Radiothon yesterday, made a contribution, and good stuff. So let's see here. The most profitable item in the vast majority of restaurants is iced tea, says Mike in Oxford. I take your word for it. Could be right.
Yeah, because, you're just literally paying for the water in the tea bag.
Yeah.
And the sugar.
That's right.
Maybe
South. A little sugar if you're drinking sweet tea.
Not a little sugar if it's in the South.
Yeah, that's true.
You ever work in a restaurant, they're pouring a whole heck of a lot of sugar in that sweet tea.
Yeah. And if it's unsweet tea and you're using sweetener, I guess there's a little cost to it. But it's probably about the same, I would think. So Joel from Tupelo says, going off what the other gentleman said about JT, I know, it says, I'm Joel from Tupelo, but I'm originally from Madison. Still listen to Madison Central football on the radio, and it's not the same without JT. Yeah, he was great at that. Appreciate that feedback, Joel. Let's see what else we got. Well, that explains why my dog Ellie got diarrhea. She ate my chicken wrap I got from Taco Bell. No, she's not a house dog. Well, you didn't feed it lettuce, did you? So, oh my gosh.
But he was happy she's not a house dog after the Taco Bell.
Jerry in Waynesboro, that's right, says, well, the lettuce bug has been reported in Mississippi. Time for, guess what? Ivermectin. It will knock it out in one dose, but be quiet. The FDA will ban it again. Okay. Ivermectin? I don't know about that. we've gotten to a point where that seems to be like the cure for everything, right? You're blind here, have some ivermectin, you can see again. You got a little overboard, I think. Oh, man. People not understanding that businesses can set their own margins, says Walter in Tupelo. If they're too high, go elsewhere. That's capitalism. Yeah, and if the prices are too high, you won't have any customers if they got a choice to obtain whatever that product is or service somewhere else. So, yeah, exactly. Walter, we don't need government involved in all that. That's the main point.
In fact, 99 times out of 100, when government steps in, it all goes to crap.
There's no doubt about it.
The only time government stepping in actually does anything to benefit anybody is on the rare occurrence when they have to step in after a natural disaster, and that's just because they have the resources.
Yeah.
But those resources come from tax dollars that it would be better spent on helping after a natural disaster than making sure somebody can sit on their butt all day and play video games, or ensuring that some DEI hire has a great retirement but doesn't actually provide anything of merit or benefit to society. They just got a cushy government gig where they have to not do anything because, well, they're the not my problem people.
That's exactly right. So an example is what the self-avowed democratic socialist, really a communist, Zoran Mondani, the mayor of New York, wants to impose strict rent control. He's even talking about seizing property. You've seen that.
After he and all his cronies got a raise.
Oh, that's exactly right. They sure did. They voted themselves a raise. The city council did. And it's a huge city council, right, in the city of New York as well. So there's small districts, but a bunch of them.
Then he went to watch the World Cup with a dude that strangled his wife.
Right, that's right. I forgot about that. So
it's almost like he's not just stupid, he's also evil.
Yeah, that's not just stupid, but also evil. I like that. That's absolutely true. But that's getting the question. That's getting the attention, I should say. Even Vice President J.D. Vance says the GOP must fix the economy to avoid further evolution of socialism in this country, further interest in it, and further popularity, I should say, of the deeply flawed economic system of socialism. I think what the vice president's saying there is, if generally speaking, if people aren't happy about things, and in particular their economic, their financial situation, they just say, well, we just got to change it. Right, we got, but it's not just minor changes, which include what you were just talking about, getting government the hell out of the private sector and the private economy. But
government certainly hasn't helped lower the price of health care or education or housing or daycare or really anything they've decided to put their thumb on the scale for.
Right, and that's a problem. So. That I think the vice president is right to call attention to this. That people tend to seize and feed on those situations. Well, it's not working under the current system, so let's just throw it out completely and start over and install this new system. And this new system they're looking for is socialism. Now, the good news is some recent polls show still is not popular. It is popular among Democrats, but overall, when you combine Republicans and Democrats, capitalism, I think in this latest poll I saw, still comes out with 51% approval. That's too low for my liking, honestly. You've got next in terms of approval, 20-something% approve of democratic socialism, and then even fewer approve of all-in, full-blown socialism. So is that going to be a problem for the Democrats in the midterms? It should be. I hope so. On the C-Spire text line, someone said Tillison's service station at Brookhaven. Sounds like maybe that is exclusively a gas station, an oil station, a service station. Interesting. Appreciate you letting us know that. I wonder if they do auto repair as well, though, because remember, usually they had a garage shop that could do minor sort of repairs. Also sell
That's
tires.
what I presume when I hear service station instead of gas station.
Yeah, okay.
Like oil changes and tires at the minimum.
Coming right back.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, so the United Kingdom is crusading against social media. Nothing new there. They want to ban use of social media for children. This is actually a curfew for 16 and 17-year-olds. No social media past midnight. Huh? Is that going to really do anything?
No.
I don't think so either. This is crazy. The UK's Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, they released a proposal that would impose overnight curfews on social media apps between midnight and 6 a.m. would by default switch off features that, quote, serve up personalized content for these 16 and 17-year-olds. Still need to be legislated by, of course, the Parliament. Expected to be enforced next spring. I'm just not sure that that's going to have any kind of impact.
You got to remember, this is the same country where if you go to the store and buy a television set and go home within a couple days, sometimes as long as a week, you're going to have somebody from the government show up and knock on your door and ask, have you started paying your bill?
Yeah.
Because you have to pay to get over-the-air entertainment in England.
You've shared that with us before, and I'd forgotten, but that is crazy.
So to the point where even if you're not connected, you got a TV, you got to pay.
Oh, my gosh.
Because we're all in this together on this tiny island that we somehow convinced the rest of the world we were this big, bad country, so you better let us in. Let us put our flag down.
Speaking of price controls. Oh, man. So now in jolly old England, a 16-year-old can consent to sex, and they can drink alcohol in restaurants with adults. And they can join the Navy, the Royal Navy. But no social media. Oh, geez. I just don't see. In fact,
the only halfway reasonable argument I've seen, and I don't even buy into this being a solution for this problem, but the argument is that teens of that age group are using social media to coordinate acts of violence or acts of robbery or just acts of malfeasance, and they want to try to cut back on that.
Yeah.
My thought is, well, you already defanged the police. They're walking around with a little billy club and a bad attitude. I guess you wouldn't want the coppers to have to go up against a 16-year-old thug with a freaking machete or samurai sword with a billy club, but still, you would think just policing the teens that are actually acting out and doing bad things instead of punishing everybody would be the more fair way of dealing with it. But we're, again, talking about England. Fairness doesn't come into the equation. It's all about how you do in your class. And I'm not talking about in school. I'm talking about, are you in the upper echelon of society?
Yeah.
Are you upper crust, stiff upper lip? Or are you the plebes that they don't really give a rat's rear end about? It's the same problem they're having with the rape gangs and the grooming gangs. It wasn't happening to the upper crust of society. It wasn't happening to the lords and ladies of England, so they didn't give a rip.
Yeah.
It was happening to the working class, the lower class, the people they didn't really care about.
So The Guardian wrote, in Scotland at 16, you can legally move out, get married, work full-time, leave education, and enlist, but can't be on your phone when you want. Oh, man. Said, I'm sorry, that's stupid. Wow. I just don't think this is a policy that's going to achieve, I guess, the objective of less screen time.
I mean, if you want to see what American society would be like a couple generations down the road if Democrats got their way on everything, you can just look across the pond at England.
That is absolutely
because the most
true.
conservative people in England would be considered moderate Democrats here in America.
That's a good point. That's a glimpse into what our country would look like if we go down this path that the Democrats are trying to lead us. That's 100% right.
I should rephrase that. The most conservative politicians in England would be considered moderate Democrats. There's plenty of conservative people in England that really don't like the government.
I agree. And watching the weekly meeting they have with both houses come together with the prime minister is always entertaining because they're so polite in their disrespect. They're so polite with their insults and their name calling, aren't they? It's just interesting. It's funny to watch. On the C Spire text line, did you guys see the main Democrat Senate debate to replace Plattner? If not, you should watch it for a good laugh. Bunch of lunatics, especially the one called Ashley Webb. Well, I have read about Ashley Webb, but no, I didn't see that. I'm not surprised that it was lunatics. That it's a hold my beer contest of who can say and propose the craziest stuff more than anything.
It fell just short of looking like you threw the curtain back at the carnival and let everybody watch the freak show.
Oh, man. Paul and Hernando says, and get out and vote if you don't want to be led down that path. Amen, Paul. Agree. The Democrat Socialists, they've got their own problems with infighting, of course. They wanted to get old.
Nothing's ever enough for the most idiotic and radical among us.
They say they're not a party, but they do endorse. They're a movement. They're activists. And they were seeking to endorse someone for president 2028.
They say they're not a party because they think that's magical words that will do what they want it to do. Kind of like when people get pulled over and immediately start screaming, I want your supervisor. They think it's magic words. Like if you just cast that spell, things will change.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't agree on endorsing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because they said she's not harsh enough on Israel. And that's a big plank in their platform is to be 100% anti-Israel. Not only do they want to eliminate the United States Senate and the president and just have this one body that the people would elect, which would then create they want to also eliminate the Supreme Court as it stands right now. Of course, that would happen if you got rid of the president. But they want to create this system where we elect this one single body, which then appoints a chief executive and appoints a judiciary. That's what they want to do. Just no Senate, no bicameral structure. They also want to completely eliminate the Department of War. They want to defund that 100%, grant amnesty.
But no, these morons aren't funded by our adversaries. Nah.
Yeah, so they want wide open borders. They want to grant amnesty to everybody that's here. And they've leaned heavily into the radical gender ideology stuff. They basically want government to pay for sex changes and everything, all the ongoing treatment and drugs required to make that stick, I guess.
Because much like Mamdani, anyone willingly and voluntarily saying they are a Democrat socialist. They're not just stupid, they're evil.
It truly is, and it's scary. Speaking about the radical gender ideology, the president of the University of California campus in San Francisco was on the Hill, and he was testifying about, because they do receive some federal money, they're testifying about the strength and the presence of their DEI policies. And he was asked a question about, I guess it's kind of a litmus test of this to find out where he stands on stuff, is asked a question about, can men get pregnant? And he said, well, most people who do get pregnant are women. Most. That's what he said. I'm not kidding. Most. But refused to say men can't get pregnant, and went on with the crazy around-the-world response and description of, well, if you're a male, or if you're a female, but you decide you want to be a male, you're a male, but of course you've got the ability to bear a child. But stop short of saying...
Do I need to say it again? Stupid and evil.
But I just thought that was hilarious. Most are women. We're taking a break. Final segment coming up next.
I'm Rex Baker.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
It's finally Friday. I'm free again. I got my motor running for a wild weekend. It's finally Friday. I'm out of control. Forget the working blues and let the good time roll.
That's our customary bumper song for the final segment on a Friday. The great George Jones, Finally Friday. On the C Spire text line, Jerry in Waynesboro sent us, looks like a little news on the dollar versus the ruble, the Russian ruble, the currency of this country versus the currency of Russia. What does the strength of the dollar help or harm? Please explain. And that's a great question, Jerry, and I'll attempt to kind of break it down for you. It can be both a blessing and a curse, talking about a strong dollar. So the blessing, the benefit of a strong dollar is it just means you can use your dollars to buy more foreign currency. And you need the foreign currency to purchase goods from the foreign countries. So that just means your dollar goes further buying foreign goods. You're an importer. You can import more. However, the flip side of that is you're an American company and you export your goods or services to other countries. And they have to buy American dollars. And their currency doesn't go as far when the dollar is strong relative to their currency. And so they buy less. That means that the American companies have smaller markets, smaller opportunities. Generally, it harms their sales. So you look for an equilibrium. Now, you got to remember what currency's traded on a global basis, a commodities market, currency markets, I should say, just like oil and agricultural commodities are traded in these global markets. It's markets, it's traders that set those values and those ratios, and it's based on their belief about the strength of the country's economy, its government's financial condition as well. And that's why our dollar sometimes gets harmed because of all this dang debt we're racking up. But they also know the United States is not going to default on its debt, even if it means printing money. And then they say, well, if they got to print money, that could be inflationary, and that has an impact on the value of a dollar. So that's a little bit more nuanced maybe than you asked, but in general, Jerry, that's how the currency world works. Is that understandable there?
Yeah,
Ryan?
like the only thing outside of that framework I can think of was when the euro was introduced. And it became very strong all of a sudden out of nowhere, even stronger than the dollar on some days.
Yeah.
And you had some people prognosticating and saying, oh, well, this is a shift. This is a change in the global paradigm. But really all it was no, you had a couple dozen countries all demanding euros because they were brand new. The demand was through the roof.
Yeah.
Because it was just getting off the ground.
It was a novelty, honestly. And then, but
that's the only thing I can think of that doesn't quite fit into that framework.
Yeah, that's right.
Because there was external pressures from the demand of it just being a new currency.
It was hype. It's kind of like when SpaceX went public not so long ago. Now it has fallen back down to earth, pun intended there. It's where it should be, right? So it's not unusual. You get a lot of hype initially. But, yeah, that is an exception, but it was not a sustainable exception. The markets finally normalized it and got everything back to where it ought to be. On the C-Spire text line, Jason in Starkville says, let's also not forget our state government voted to not let porn be watched in the state over a kid's suicide, also known as censorship. I don't think that's what the state did exactly. It didn't ban it. What it did was require those sites that publish those content to validate that whoever was logging in was of age, was not a minor.
Which is kind of like a soft ban because many of those websites and entities are not going to risk the liability and exposure of collecting personal data.
Yeah.
Or they're just going to make it a political statement and just refuse to take part in Mississippi. So, yeah. But
there are some
but
tools.
It's also not – it's not a hard ban because there are still tons of avenues to pornographic material available online that this state law can't do anything about because it's originating from outside the state, outside the country. Yeah, it is technically a soft ban, but it's one of those where how do you enforce it 100%?
Well,
you can't.
And I've actually researched that. There are some pretty strong tools to help verify the identity of the user, but they ain't perfect. Right. So there are ways of circumventing it. I guess in the old days it was, trying to sneak the Playboy magazine. So the equivalent today is all this digital. Now, it's a lot stronger, that. I've read some reports that indicate that the content produced by the porn industry is like, as a category, the number one consumer of digital storage or something to that effect. I know there's a lot of people that think that data centers are just big, you see this, surveillance centers. So just for the heck of it, I said, well, the one way to probably determine if there's any truth or validity to that is to think about what the revenue is produced by the data center industry versus the revenue produced by the companies in the surveillance industry, like these Flock cameras. Do you know that the company behind Flock is like a $250 million company? We're out of here today. Thanks a lot. Stay safe. God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.